On today's fencing project, we're using a combination of wood change of direction posts and these Gallagher Insulated Line posts. So this is definitely an innovative product, and we use the Gallagher Insulated Line post a lot on the farm. They are basically a replacement for a T-post. So they come in different heights. This one's a 4-foot tall post, and each of these positions is a space where you could clip a wire onto the post or electrified tape using a clip like this. And the clip simply snaps over the line, and the clips have to be purchased separately from the post in the quantity that you need to complete your fence. The really neat thing about these posts is that the whole post is the insulator. So you pound these into the ground and the wires can touch directly onto this post, and they're going to be protected from shorting out against the ground. The post is basically a fiberglass rod with some sort of plastic overmolding, a really tough fiber reinforced plastic overmolding. And they are really strong, but they're also very, very flexible. So when something hits the fence, they'll bend, but they won't break typically. And they can be pounded in just with regular hand tools. So we're going to demonstrate that now. I think the first thing I'd say about installing these posts is the orientation is important. So if you look at the post, you'll see positions for the wires. Those have to be facing the fence. And the way that you can tell, once you put the pounder over it, the way you can tell is that this wider part of the flange on the base that has the slots in it, that needs to be parallel to your fence. And you're definitely going to want to use some hearing protection for this job. The manufacturer recommends that you install this sleeve over the post, and the reason for that is to stiffen the post so that while you pound it, the energy that you're transferring goes into pounding the post into the ground rather than bending and vibrating it. So I just get them started. I want to make sure that it's in line with the wires, and what we're doing with this post is using it to maintain our wire spacing in the middle of a longer run between two wood posts. So I want to just put it right in line. These posts are no good for changes of direction. So you can only use these line posts. They're too flexible. So if you change direction, they'll just simply bend over. You need to use them in a straight line of fence. So I've got my driver here. It's just like a typical T-post driver, except it's designed with a diameter specifically for these posts. I'm going to check the base, like I mentioned before, and make sure that the wide flange on the base is in line with the fence. And I'm going to give it a couple taps to get it started. And then I'm just going to use my body to hold the wires out of the way while I give it a couple good slams and pound it in flush with the ground. So I did a pretty good job. It's pretty straight. If we're driving these in very stony areas, we like to use a pilot driver. Our ranch is very, very rocky. I've got it marked for how far we need to pound it in, and it's just, a piece of an old pry bar or a rock chisel or something like that. Just some strong steel that you can pound into the ground and pull out and then drive your post in behind it. Okay, so I'm going to use my marked post that I showed you earlier to make sure that I'm putting these clips at the right spacing. But all you need to do is hold the wire up to the post, and then slide the clip over and make sure that the ears on both sides are clipped over and locked in place. It's really simple to install them. It's also really simple to remove them if you change the wire heights or if they break and you need to replace them. The clips can sometimes break if something hits the fence or things like that. So it's good to be able to easily remove them just like that by pulling on one side. Just like that. And now we've got our spacings maintained. Our bottom wire is held off the ground at the right height, and it's very flexible, but it's strong, and If something pushes into the fence, it's a lot less likely to bend or just break a clip. So it's a great way to put in your line posts on a multi-strand high tensile electric fence. For the wood posts on this fence, we use the same marker. You could mark on a dropper stick or a fiberglass rod, whatever you've got. But what I like to do is come to what's going to be the outside of the fence post. I'll make pencil marks at each of my wire heights, and then I fasten the insulators before we started pulling that wire. In this case, where we're using a single wood post for a change of direction, this is only a slight change of direction, so I didn't build a brace here. I just drove the post at a slight angle out against the change of direction. So the post is tipped out a few degrees this way, so that if it gets pulled back, it's going to pull to straight. For any more major change of direction, over 20 or 25 degrees change, you're going to want to build a brace there. Otherwise, this post will get pulled over, and if you have soft soil, the single post might not work for you. And what you can see here is we're using wood post claw insulators for the hot wires, and we're just using a simple staple for the ground wires because the ground wire doesn't need to be electrically isolated from the post. It's fine if it touches it. These wood post claw insulators are quite affordable. There's several other options. If you need to be able to remove the wires to drive over the fence more regularly, there's other options with pin locks or a clamp that goes over the wire. These are quite affordable. They can be stapled to the post, but I prefer to use deck screws, 1.5 or 2-inch deck screws, because I find that over time, the staples tend to pull out of the wood. It's difficult to replace them. So it's worth a little bit of added expense to use screws to fasten these down. And then if you needed to remove a wire, you can just remove one screw and rotate the claw sideways to take that wire out of the claw. On any wires that you're stapling to the post, just like a barbed wire fence or any other fence, remember, you don't want to drive the staple right in tight. You want to make sure to leave it a little bit loose so that the wire has room to move back and forth like it does in all these insulators, so that when something impacts the fence, it can pull and slide rather than snap. And that's the beauty of the high tensile fence. It has enough strength to bend, so usually even if a tree falls on it or an animal goes right through it, it'll just spring back into place with minimal damage to your fence.